So let's take a look what we need to cut for our universal add-on wallet panel. We need to cut 2 zipper pocket pieces from fabric and 2 from interfacing, and as you can see I've already fused those on there. So 2 of those. We need to cut from our cork, leather, vinyl, anything that doesn't fray. We need to cut a coin pocket, 1 of, and you'll need to cut the hole there. If you're not using a cutting machine, you'll need to do that manually. I've used a heat transfer vinyl onto the back, which I've got stuff stuck all over. It's actually quite sticky because my mat isn't very good anymore, so I spray some basting spray on it to hold it on the mat, and then I always seem to get a bit of a residue, and that sticks every other bit of rubbish onto the back. So maybe I need to invest in a new mat. Anyway, we need to cut 1 coin pocket and the hole. For your ID pocket, you need to cut 1. Now, so you're cutting out that center piece to make a window, like that. You need to cut 1 coin flap outer with your hole. 1 coin flap inner with the hole. We need to cut 1 gusset piece. This is for the coin pocket. We need to cut 1 body snap support piece and hole in the center. And we need to cut a coin pocket support piece with a hole. It's not quite in the center, so you'll just have to line your hole up with your coin pocket, and the top edges will be flush, but we'll get to that when we work through the pattern. We need to cut a section A piece, just 1 of. Now be aware that the size is slightly different sideways, so make sure when you are using it that you have it the correct orientation. We need to cut 1 body flap outer. We need to cut 1 body flap inner. We need to cut 1 body piece with all the slits and cut that window out like I have here. So we've got our credit card slots and our hole and our window all cut out. So yeah, same with all the flap pieces. Wherever there's a hole marked on the pattern, you need to punch a hole if you're not using a cutting machine. So we need to cut 1 spun bonded or whatever else you may be using for your card slots. I've put a heap of suggestions in the pattern in case you can't get the spun bonded, but this is really good stuff. I get it from Spotlight here in Australia, and it's very strong and easy to work with. It's typically what you find underneath furniture. It's really cheap as well. I think it was less than $2 for a metre of this, so that was a win. We need to cut 1 clear vinyl ID pocket window, and that's that there. I'll take that clip off so I don't leave too many marks on my vinyl. So that's all that what you need to cut. For hardware, we need a zipper, 9-inch 23cm zipper, and a zipper pull, and it's a number 5. And we also need 2 snaps. So you're not needing a lot of hardware for this, but 2 snaps. I'm using a metal snap. You can use a cam snap or whatever kind of snap that you can find. Got the size in the pattern, so try not to go too much bigger than that. If you do, you'll need to move your holes in the flaps to allow. And let's get started. Now, I also use glue to construct this. This is the one that I use. It's a fast drying permanent fabric glue. I suggest a fast drying one because otherwise it slows down the progress of making your wallet while you have to wait for the glue to dry. This one's dry within a few minutes, so it's very good, and it doesn't gum up the needle when it's dry. So that's something to bear in mind. So now we're going to do some gluing. So grab your glue and we're going to glue the coin snap support onto the back of the coin pocket. So that will go there like that. So my glue only requires glue on one side only. If you are using a glue that requires both sides, then I suggest laying your pattern piece on it and draw around it with a pen or something so that it marks where you want to glue. I'm just going to use this old stick here to spread my glue around. Just make sure. And top is flush. Leave that to dry, and then once that's dry we're going to top stitch across the top of our coin pocket and across the top of our gusset piece. Okay, so we're going to top stitch the top of our gusset piece. I'm going to use a top stitch length of 3.4 and I'm stitching 3mm 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And I'm just going to back tack to hold because I can't be bothered to pull threads to the back and not off. Sometimes this doesn't feed properly and I have to lift the foot up. I don't know why, it's a bit annoying. And now across the top edge of our coin pocket. Due for a service. Like that. So now that we've top stitched across those top edges, we're going to need to glue the gusset to our coin pocket, wrong sides together, so make sure you've got follow the pattern and glue that side to that side, so basically like that. So I'm just going to run a small amount of glue down this side. And we want the glue to be about 3mm 1/8 of an inch wide. And I've got it a little bit wider there, typical of me. This stick is getting a bit sticky. And onto this side of the coin pocket. Whoops. Me and glue. So now we'll glue those right sides together. Make the edges flush at the top and the sides and the bottom. Wipe away any oozing glue and allow to dry. And once we've got that dry, we will top stitch 3mm 1/8 of an inch down that side. Okay, so now I'm going to top stitch down this gusset side of my coin pocket to secure that into place. 3mm 1/8 of an inch seam, 3.4 stitch length. Just back tacking at the beginning and the end to tie those seams off. So now we're going to glue our body snap support piece onto the back of our body. Basting spray has really made a sticky mess on the back there. Lesson learnt. Okay, so put some glue onto the back of the body support, snap support piece. Smear that around. And line it up with your hole. Can't see the hole there. Sorry, I'm getting my head in the thing. Okay, so line that up. Stick that into place. Like that. And now we want to grab our ID pocket and our ID pocket window. And we're just going to add a little bit of glue around this opening. Gosh, I always get a big blob to start with. Don't put too much glue on here because you don't want it oozing out onto your vinyl. Just a little bit. Spread that out so it's nice and thin and it won't ooze. I need a new stick, I think. Getting quite a build up on this. Like that. Grab your vinyl, and now you just make sure that this edge doesn't stick out past that curved bit. So pretty close. Center it left to right, up and down. Like that. Press into place. And now we're just going to leave that to dry. And then we're going to top stitch all the way around the opening and down this curved edge. Okay, so now my glue has dried. I'm going to top stitch down this side here, 3mm, 1/8 of an inch from the edge. This is just the outer edge of the curve. My stitch length is 3.4. And now I'm going to top stitch around the inner window. You can pull the threads to the back and knot them off if you prefer, but I'm too lazy to do that, so I'm just going to back stitch a couple of times, or back stitch a couple of stitches just to lock those threads. Find that doesn't slip very well, you can add a piece of scrap paper under there just to help it slide. And then back to where we started and lock it off. Like that. So now, retrieving your body flap inner and body flap outer pieces, we're going to top stitch down the right hand edge of your body flap outer and down the left edge of your body flap inner, so that when we put them wrong sides together, the top stitching are both on the same end. Okay, so now we're going to top stitch down the right hand side of our outer flap piece. 3mm, 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and stitch length of 3.4. Like that. And now we're going to top stitch down the left hand side of the inner flap. So I'm just going to turn that around so I've got it on this side. Like that. Okay, so setting the outer flap piece aside, grab your inner flap piece and your ID pocket, and we're going to add some glue onto the back of the ID pocket, just around the 3 straight edges. We just want a small amount of glue. We're going to try and keep it 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch wide. So don't glue the curved bit because you don't want to glue your pocket shut. Now we're going to put this, turn your flap around so the curved edge, this is the inner flap, curved edge at the top. You line the top edges together like so, and I'm going to put it on there and align these side edges. Nice equal distance here at the bottom, or the top rather. So it looks like that. Let that dry, and then we're going to stitch around those 3 sides. Don't stitch or glue this end shut because that's where your card will go in. Once your glue has set, we're going to stitch, top stitch 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch around those 3 straight sides, locking our stitches off at each corner. A couple of back stitches to secure because this will be a high stress point, so you definitely want to make sure you back stitch there. Like your flat pieces on the wrong side of your body inner flap, we're going to add glue all the way around the edge. Can go a bit wider here, even a centimetre or so, around the curve. Spread that out. You want to spread it out so it comes right to the edge. Add a little bit in the middle as well, just to make sure it stays put, but it won't move anyway because we're going to stitch it on. But we're not stitching this top edge, so a bit of extra glue will help secure it. Now position this onto the wrong side, lining up your holes and your side edges so that there. And if you do have anything that sticks out and you want to even it up, just give it a little trim. A bit of sandpaper might file it off, maybe, if it's not much. Clean that off a bit. Usually rubs off quite easy when it's fresh. Maybe you're not as messy as what I am. Like that. Now once that's dry, we're going to go back over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch down this straight edge and around this curve to meet back up with the top stitching on that side there. Okay, so now we're going to top stitch this untop stitched short end here and around the bottom of the curve. I'm going to start up here where the other previous top stitching is. Like that. Retrieve your coin flap outer and your coin flap inner, and we're just going to glue these together, so just add some glue to the inner piece. smooth it out so there's glue on the edges, right to the edge. Now we want to align these holes. And keep the raw edges flush. Happy with them being in the right place. Press to hold and leave that to dry. Okay, so now that the glue has dried, I'm going to top stitch down the short side, round the curve and up the other short side of our queen pocket flap. 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and top stitch length of 3.4. Like that. So now it's time to install our snap pieces, and I've just got those ready here, and I need to grab the appropriate pieces for my snap machine. Add this onto here. Like that. Okay, so now we need to work on our card slots. So retrieve your body panel piece and your card slot fabric. So using some double-sided tape, just going to run this along the bottom of the card slot. We will save some time and we'll just put it on the bottom of each of them and peel it off as needed. Like that. So now pull off the lower piece, and if your card slot fabric has a right side, we're putting it wrong side down onto that lower card slot like that. And we're going to top stitch on that bottom side of that lower card slot. Now I'm just going to top stitch on the lower side of the bottom card slot. I'm going to stitch 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch from the edge, top stitch length of 3.4. Stitching just from next to the hole there to the other end of the hole. Now if you find it hard to figure out where to stop and start and you're really fussy and you want to make sure it's neat, you can put a strip of washi tape either side just to give you a better guide of where to start and stop, but I'm not that fussy. Don't mind if there's a stitch or two that's not exact. So now what we need to do is we're going to measure and put a mark 4.5 centimeters or 1 3/4 of an inch down from this top edge of this black stuff here, or the bottom of the card slot. Just make a mark either side of the fabric. Peel the next little bit of sticky stuff off, backing. And with that nice and firm, tight, we're just going to fold that level with those marks, keeping this all nice and even. Press into place. Now you can grab a card and just check that slot, because sometimes different thicknesses of card slot fabric might make a difference. So just check that that card's going to sit where you want it to sit and adjust as necessary or as desired. So now we have that. We'll go over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch on the top side of the first slot and on the bottom side of the second slot, making sure that you keep your card slot fabric away to the side, the right hand side. Okay, so now we're stitching on the top side of the first slot, 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch from the side, from the slot. I'm back stitching to lock my stitches. You can, if you prefer, pull it through to the other side and knot off, but I'm too lazy to do that, so I just like to back stitch to lock my threads. And now the bottom side of the second card slot. Like that. Okay, so we now have 3 rows of top stitching there. Flip it over and we're going to fold that down, measure and mark 4.5 centimeters or 1 3/4 of an inch down. Peel this next piece of backing paper off your double-sided tape and we're just going to fold that over. Making sure that's nice and taut down there. You can even lay the card on there to make sure that that stays nice and taut. Get my head out of the video and press that into place. Now flip it back over and now we're going to top stitch the top side of the second slot and the bottom side of the third slot. Okay, so now we're top stitching the top side of the second card slot. Three millimeters, 1/8 of an inch from the slot, and stitch length of 3.4. And now the bottom side of the third card slot, and just always make sure that this card slot fabric stays over to the side. Like that. So now we're going to stitch the top side of the third card slot. Three millimeters, 1/8 of an inch, stitch length 3.4. And the bottom side of the top card slot. Now, do not stitch the top side yet because we still have to make our last card pocket. Okay, so now we need to flip it over, and what we're going to do is we're just going to pop a little bit of tape somewhere in here. Just so it holds it into place while we do this last pocket. Like that. There we go. Now just going to fold that down. I'm going to measure the 4.5 centimeters, 1 3/4 of an inch down as before. Using my card to get it nice and firm. And making sure that's running nice and smooth. Press into place. Now flip it over. We're going to stitch the top side of our last top card slot. Okay, so now we're stitching the last side of our top card slot. 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch from the slot. Back stitching to lock my threads. 3.4 stitch length. Like that. Okay, so now that we have our last pocket stitched, we can trim away any excess fabric here. Just leave it above that double-sided tape. Doesn't really matter. But there we go. Now, what we need to do is attach that to our body lining. Now, I've just got a sample piece here of double-sided waterproof canvas. I'm just going to attach mine to. But obviously you would put it onto whatever bag that you are making. I'm just going to eyeball it. Now what I'm going to do, you could use double-sided tape here, but I'm just going to use a bit of glue because it's cheaper. Okay, so now place it where you want it. I could have measured and marked this previously. Anyway, there we go. So once that's dried, we're going to go over to the sewing machine. We're going to top stitch all the way around the outer edge. Do not top stitch the pocket window there, just the outside. So now we're going to stitch our body onto our lining. We're just going to stitch it 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch at stitch length 3.4 all the way around the outer edge. like that. Okay, so now that we have stitched that into place, we're just going to make this window opening. I'm just going to use a stitch rip to get a bit of a hole in here. And I'm going to turn it over. Now be very careful that you don't cut your cork underneath here, and only cut your lining, because you do not want to snip into your cork. To remove this lining away from this overlay underneath. It doesn't have to be neat because no one's ever going to see this. And I know some people will want to make this neat just because. And that's fine too. Like that. Now, set that aside for the minute. Grab your zipper pocket pieces and your zipper. Now, with your zipper, just run some stitches across each end so that the tape doesn't come undone, and that's got to be already cut to 23 centimeters or 9 inches, the same width as your pockets. Now, grabbing some double-sided tape, it's going to run that along the top edge of one of the pieces, and it is the top edge if you are using directional fabric. And grab your zipper. Doesn't matter which side the pull is on at this point, but we're placing that wrong side down onto the right side of the zipper pocket fabric. Like that. Press firmly to stick it down, and now we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch 6 millimeters 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Okay, so I'm just going to change to my zipper foot here, moving the needle right over, putting the stitch length down to 2.4, stitching 6 millimeters 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the zipper pocket and zipper tape. Now that we have stitched our zipper into place, I'm just going to press the zipper away from the fabric, or the fabric away from the zipper, like that. So now retrieving your second zipper pocket piece, run a piece of double-sided tape along the top edge. And we're going to place our pocket right side down, wrong side of zipper down, right side of fabrics together along that top edge. Press into place like that, and now we're going to go over to the sewing machine and stitch 6 millimeters 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the zipper tape and pocket. So now I'm going to stitch my pocket into place, my zipper into place, 6 millimeters 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the tape. Stitch length is 2.4. Now I'm going to go over to the ironing board and press my pocket fabric away from the zipper so that it looks like that on this side and that on that side. Okay, so now that we have our zipper pocket ready, we're going to attach it to here. So what we need to do is we're going to put some double-sided tape around this, and we're going to put that down there and line up the side edges with the pockets on either side. I'll start by adding the tape. Either side of the pocket window. Like that. Now you put the zipper pull on the side that you want to open your zipper from. So if you're opening it from left to right, put it over on the left hand side. And we've got it right sides of fabric down and right side of zipper tape up. Now, like I said, we line up these edges with the fabric underneath and get that zipper in the middle. When you're happy with the placement, just press it down, and we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch all the way around this zipper box. Make sure that your fabric is staying upwards on this side, and if you've got a fabric that you can, well, you can't really pin it from there anyway. So you just have to make sure that that fabric lays down, and we're going to go over the sewing machine and stitch. Okay, so now we're going to stitch all the way around our zipper pocket window. I'm going to use a stitch length of 3.4, my top stitch length, and making sure this pocket fabric's up here and laying down on the bottom side so it's not going to be caught in our stitches. And you can either pull your threads through to the back here, or you can knot them off like I'm going to, because I'm too lazy to pull them to the back and knot off. And we're stitching 3mm 1/8 of an inch from the zipper opening. And I like to just go back, across and back again on each end, just to make that a little bit more strong, because this is a high stress area. Check to make sure pocket fabric's out of the way. And finish up back where we started, and just lock those threads or pull them through to the back. Like that. Okay, so now that we have stitched our zipper into place, we need to flip it over, and we're just going to smooth this pocket fabric down. And we're going to grab a scissors and some pins. Just going to pop a pin in there, a pin in this side, going to trim these edges even. Like that. And now we're going to pop, Now if you were going to turn through the pocket, you would press those bottom edges up, and then you'd only stitch the two sides and leave the bottom open, but I wouldn't be turning through this. I would be turning through a pocket on the other side of the lining or in some other method. So I'm going to be stitching this shut. So now we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're just going to bend this back. We're going to stitch down here and down here and around along the bottom. We're going to stitch from with the right side uppermost, like that. Put your overlay right side up, bend your fabric lining away from the zipper pocket, and we're going to stitch using a stitch length of 2.4, seam width of 1 centimetre 3/8 of an inch, although you may find it easier to use a zipper foot, and if you don't happen to maintain the 3/8 of an inch 1 centimetre seam allowance, it's really not going to matter. This is the third time I'm doing this. The first time I ran out of bobbin thread and didn't realise. Like that. We can set our lining aside for the minute. Retrieve your universal add-on wallet panel section A piece. I'm going to get my piece of scrap paper back because I'm going to do some gluing. We're going to need our flap, coin pocket flap, and our coin pocket piece. Now, first set that aside. And we're going to draw a line 1 centimetre 3/8 of an inch from the top. Just make sure you've got this orientated the right way so you don't end up with the wrong direction, having it going in the wrong direction. Like that. Okay, so with that line on the back there, now we're going to grab our coin pocket piece. We're going to run some glue down the gusset side, along the bottom, and along this side here, leaving this top stitched piece unglued. Like that. Now we're going to place our glue down onto our panel piece. Going to line these side and bottom edges so that they're flush and even. I'm just going to bend that over and make that flush and even. I'm just going to grab some clips for this to hold it while that glue dries and sets. Once that glue has sufficiently dried, then we're going to remove the clips. Make sure that's dried. Actually, I'll leave them there for a little bit longer. And I'm going to apply some glue onto this strip here. Trying to stay this glue side of the line. Don't go over it too far if you can help it. Now we're going to place this flap inner side down, like so. So your buttons showing, and we're putting that along that line. Maybe stick a couple of clips at the side. Press to firmly get that to stick. And now we're just going to wait for that glue all to dry. Okay, so now that your glue has dried, remove your clips. Now we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch the right hand edge from the top stitching that's already there right down this side, and that's all we're going to do. We're not top stitching the rest at this point because we'll attach it to our body with top stitching these other two sides. So just that one side, because that will create a slip pocket underneath. So now we're going to top stitch 3mm 1/8 of an inch from the edge, starting at the top edge of the panel A piece. We're using a top stitch length of 3.4 like before, 3mm 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, so now that we have top stitched this side, we need to flip this over, and we're just going to draw a 1cm line, or 3/8 of an inch, up from the bottom edge of the flap. Like that. And now we're going to put some glue on this side within that line, down this side and down this side. We're not going to put any glue on this top stitch side over here. I just make this a 1/8 of an inch 3mm strip of glue. You don't want a heap of glue here. Retrieve your body, and now we're going to stick this down onto our body. And just line up those edges so that they're nice and flush and even, and press that down to stick. And allow that to dry. Once that's dry, we're going to top stitch along there, up there, and along there. 3mm 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the panel piece, not the flap. Okay, now with our zipper pocket pegged up out of the way, we're going to stitch 3mm 1/8 of an inch from the edge of our coin pocket assembly with a stitch length of 3.4. Stitching across the panel, 3mm 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Making sure to back tack at these ends here because that's a high stress point. Like that. So that's left a nice little slip pocket there. I'm just going to peg that down, retrieving your pen, and we're going to draw a line 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch down from this zipper pocket opening. Get rid of this paper now. Draw that line. Just going to get that pocket pushed out of the way. Now grabbing your flap assembly, we're just going to draw a line 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the bottom edge. Bring my scrap paper back. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some glue on this mark there. We're going to line it up with that line there, and we're going to stick that down in place, and then when that has dried, we're going to stitch 3mm 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and then again at 1/4 or 6mm from the edge. So that's what we're doing now. Grabbing our glue. That. Bring that back. And now we're going to put that down on that line and press in place. I'm just going to stand here and press in place for a bit to hold it, because I can't clip it and I can't really put any weights on there successfully. This is where a fast drying glue comes in handy. Okay, that should be dry enough now. So we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch 3mm 1/8 of an inch from this bottom edge, and then at 6mm 1/4 of an inch from that edge. Okay, so now we're going to stitch our flap assembly into place. We're going to stitch 3mm 1/8 of an inch from the bottom edge of the flap all the way along. You may or may not prefer to use a zipper foot here, but just make sure that that flap is staying where it's meant to be along that line. Just open this pocket and pull it back a little bit. The zipper foot might have been a good idea here. And now I'm going to stitch at 6mm 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Actually, I am going to use a zipper foot, it might be a bit easier. Make sure your zipper pocket's up out of the way. Make sure to back tack to secure it. Like that. So now that we've completed that stitching, and yeah, I think it would have been better if I'd used a zipper foot there. I've been a bit wonky, but never mind. So there we have our little coin pocket. We've got our slip pocket under here. We've got our card pockets over here, 4 of. Like that. We have an ID pocket here on the top. You can put that in there. You could also even add a second one of these over this side if you wanted to. Just reverse the placement. We have our flap, which we can put there, and there's a little bit of ease there to allow for when you've stuffed it full of credit cards and notes and or whatever you want to put under there, some receipts, maybe a secret stash of cash that nobody knows is there, and your coin pocket here. This snap is very stiff to start with, but they usually loosen up in a little while. And take off your clips, and there you have your little note pocket or whatever. If you want to make it bigger you can, but I just want it not too deep if I'm using it for notes. But you could also use the number 3 zipper there if you wanted to, if you don't like the big zipper. But every time I suggest a 3, people want to use a 5, and if I suggest a 5, they want to use a 3, so do whatever you wish. So there we have it.